Hello and welcome everyone. I'm here at the National Museum of the United States Air Force in Dayton, Ohio. And today I'm going to be showing you around the World War II section of said museum. So, of course, America's World War II starts off in 1941, December 7th, with the attack on Pearl Harbor. You've got a P-36 Hawk and a P-35 Seversky aircraft here. Those were two of the Army Air Force's aircraft used in the defense of Pearl Harbor, what little there was. We have some airmen's clothes over here. There was, I believe that specific P-36 Hawk over there was used by an American airman to shoot down two Japanese Zeros. One of which, or well, not one of the Zeros shot down, but a Zero we'll see up ahead. American soldier dressed up like in the Philippines. Of course, the Bataan campaign. 100,000 or so American and Filipino troops captured after MacArthur surrendered. Of course, American aircraft technology in the war at this point was not quite as advanced as it was later on. We've got a Martin, I believe. I'll have to take a look at the sign. But this is a pre-war bomber design. You can see direct parallels from this bomber to a couple of the later bombers that we'll see. B-18A Bolo. Yeah, that's what it is. See, look, even though I'm a nerd, I still need to read the signs. There's our Japanese Zero, our culprit here. These were the planes, along with dive bombers and torpedo bombers, that wreaked such devastation on Pearl Harbor, proving Billy Mitchell right that aircraft can indeed sink battleships once and for all. Up ahead, we have America's revenge weapon against the Zeros and Pearl Harbor, the B-25 Mitchell bomber, named after Billy Mitchell. I talk more in depth about all of these things in a podcast episode, so I'll refer you to that if you want the specifics. I'm just going to make this quick, since my camera doesn't have that much memory on it anymore, since it's a phone camera and I've got at least 3 hours worth of video already filmed from other battlefields and such that I can't really tour it in much detail. But a few months after the attack on Pearl Harbor, America wants revenge, and the guy, Colonel Jimmy Doolittle, decides to take that task up and decides to come up with a daring plan to launch a squadron of B-25 Mitchell bombers off of a carrier flight deck and bomb Tokyo, Nagoya, Osaka, a couple other major Japanese cities. The total bomb load of the B-25 was 2 tons, 4,000 pounds of bombs. So pretty insignificant in terms of actual strategic objectives. They managed to train down in the south to get the Mitchells off of the bombers off of a 300-foot runway, because they have about 300 feet of aircraft carrier before they hit the ocean. So managed to get them to take off in 300 feet and went out in the aircraft carrier. I'll do a whole podcast episode on the Doolittle raid. It's worth a whole episode. But they managed to get on the aircraft carrier USS Hornet, get out to within 600 miles of Japan, though they were supposed to get out to 400, but circumstances intervened, and they took off, bombed Tokyo, and crash landed or parachuted out in China, and were escorted by Chinese resistance fighters back to Chinese lines and repatriated to the United States. Every year in Dayton, at the Air Force Museum, the Doolittle Raiders have met and taken a glass of cognac that Major Doolittle, or Colonel Doolittle at the time, now Major General, he's dead of course, but Major General Doolittle provided some cognac for them to toast the survivors. Every year until last year, or a couple years ago, they came. The last survivor to passed away last year. He was Jimmy Doolittle's co-pilot, and you can see his glass still upturned right there. They're going to do the ceremony this year to turn over the last glass, marking the final death of the whole command. And you can see they got the cases for all of the guys' glasses and then the one empty one. So you're gonna flip it over and then put it in. And then I got one other glass there. So 1896 cognac. That's some pretty old cognac. Go back around this way. The back of the B-25, made famous by the movie and TV show. Whatchamacallit? Forgetting the name now. This is a capital crime, punishable by capital punishment for forgetting this. Catch-22. That's it. Catch-22 is the name of the movie and TV show that made the B-25 Mitchell bomber famous. Over here, you got a P-40 Warhawk. These were the planes used by the Flying Tigers over in China. In fact, I believe we have a flight jacket from the Flying Tigers. There it is. Flying Tiger emblem. Used by the Flying Tigers in China, fought for the Chinese nationalists, fought against Japanese planes, and were the pioneers of anti-Japanese flight tactics, dogfighting tactics. So it was the lessons learned by the Flying Tigers that would help American airmen later on in the war. Got a couple less famous planes, so I'm not going to talk about them. A-26 over there, I believe? I don't know, yeah, I don't know. Dauntless, SPD Dauntless dive bomber. Normally used by the Navy, but we apparently have one here, so that's cool. Over here some more. The WASPs, the Women's Army Air Service. They would deliver airplanes from the factories to the front. And, well, did a vital service for 3 years. And then were decommissioned in 1944 because the Army Air Corps, or Army Air Forces, had so many pilots that they didn't need them anymore. What's sad is that they didn't actually give them any veteran status until, I think, the 1970s, so none of them actually got the veterans rewards, like the pension, all of that stuff. None of them got that. No GI Bill for going to college. So they eventually got that in the 70s, but really just too late to do anything. They got some Tuskegee Airmen over there, the African-American squadrons that fought in Europe using P-51s to escort B-17s, one of which is over there. We'll talk about that one later. Over missions in Germany and Italy. Got a B-24. These ones flew in the Pacific and in Europe, as well as the B-17. The B-24 was the most widely produced bomber in World War II, made by Ford Motor Company in a lot of plants in the greater Detroit, Michigan area. One of the more famous plants, Willow Run, which was I think the biggest one, could produce a B-24 in the assembly line fashion in just under 24 hours. I think it was 23 hours, 40 minutes, something like that. They were pumping one off the assembly line from start to finish. Whole B-24, 24 hours. Crazy. And of course, you know, they had lots of B-24s, one rolling off the line all the time. It just took 24 hours to complete one B-24. So, this B-17, it's rather famous. You haven't seen it over there? It's Memphis Belle. The first B-25 and crew, the first B-17 and crew to complete its 25 mission requirement and make it home to the United States. Other planes and other crews had done it, but not a plane and crew at the same time. So, Memphis Belle, B-17, plane developed in the mid-30s, could carry something around 8,000 pounds of bombs, 8 to 10,000, maybe 12,000. I'm not an expert on the actual statistics, but safe to say it could carry a large bomb load. Not as large, though, as the B-24 over there. B-17s were the predominant plane used in the 8th Air Force to bomb Germany. And if you've ever seen the movie 12 O'Clock High, you'll have seen original B-17s, and if you've seen the movie Memphis Belle made in the 1990s, you'll see CGI B-17s. But, pardon the babies. Yeah, this is the Memphis Belle. So, I won't talk too much about it, but safe to say these planes won the air war over Europe. The B-17 and B-24. Along with the Lancasters, or Lancs as they called them in Britain. Though, of course, Lancasters were only flown by the RAF, not the USAF. Or, well, actually, during the war it was the USAAF, because it was the US Army Air Forces, since they were still part of the Army, technically. So, yeah, we'll just do a quick walk around. The plane's rather famous, so, you know, you kind of want to see the whole thing. So, Memphis Belle. I have an acquaintance who actually worked on the restoration and designed the exhibit, but for privacy purposes I won't say his name. Or, well, not really a friend, more of an acquaintance, but anyway. 4-engine bomber. People you might know who flew the B-17, Curtis LeMay. He would command a group of B-17 bombers in Europe, eventually leading up to an entire air division. And he would be the guy who could command B-29s in the Pacific. So yeah. More of the exhibit hall. Kind of going at high speed here for want of time. Here we're coming up. Some people might have questions on how people use the restroom. Well, there's no number 2s, but that's where the number 1s came out. The ball turret gunner. Surprisingly, you didn't actually have to be that small to get in there, because you were curled up in the fetal position. That thing could rotate, spin around with electric motors, 360 degrees, go all the way down, all that good stuff. And you'd be sitting in there, not exactly comfortable, but you could still fit in there, even if you're my size. You'd aim through that window, all sorts of good stuff. Here's the bomb bay. Got the bomb bay doors up here. Got the hooks up top and a catwalk in the middle following that line. It's only about 8 inches wide, and during the war they wouldn't have had those safety ropes up there. And of course the plane's wobbling around, so not exactly the safest thing. If you fell off and hit, and the bomb bay doors were closed and hit one of them, they were not strong enough to hold your weight, so you just fell through. Though of course in this case it wouldn't be as bad, because you only have to fall about 8-10 feet. Of course during the war you'd be at about 25,000 feet over hostile territory, so not exactly the greatest free fall. Not as fun as real skydiving. So got the underside of the plane, of course the landing gear all curled up there. And over here, we've got a turret that they took out and have on display to show you. There's the side gunner. And we'll move around back, because I don't think I actually did this. Let me go see the tail of the plane. So there's the tail gunner's position. And it's kind of hard for me to get a good angle, but I'll try and raise the camera up as high as I can. Alright, so there's your Memphis Belle little tour. We're going to get out of here. Pretty cool exhibit though. I'd highly recommend coming to Dayton, Ohio to see this, even if you're just going to see this hangar, because of course there are 4 more and a missile silo. So, you know, it's kind of sort of the largest and oldest military air museum in the world, rivaled only by the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. And the Smithsonian split into 2 parts and 2 different sites, whereas this one's all in one location. So, pretty cool. Got a older version of the P-51 here with the inline cockpit as opposed to the bubble canopy. We'll see in a later version of the P-51. Move over here, we got back towards the B-24. Got an Italian fighter, blanking on the name. I'm not going to remember it. If you're a nerd like me, you might know, so let me know in the comments. Ooh, shoot, I was about to walk by it. This is a Spitfire. They got one on display here. Of course, if you go to the Imperial War Museum at Duxford, they got dozens. Not dozens, but they got a lot, including Hurricanes as well. So they got a Hurricane here too. It's over in another exhibit hall, but I'm too lazy to walk over there. It's about 100 yards away. There's the other P-51 I was talking about with the bubble cockpit. P-51 long-range escort fighter. Up until about 1943-44, when these things came into service, American bombers had to face flak and fighters alone with their own guns. So every B-17, about 8-10 machine guns on it. You know, a lot of firepower, but not exactly the best for dogfighting, because, you know, of course, you're not dogfighting, you're just shooting at moving targets from us. You know, it's not exactly easy to shoot down BF-109s and Focke-Wulfes, that kind of thing, from your B-17. And of course, you have to worry about the flak too, from guns like this 88mm gun. This one has a lot of veterancy stripes, so this one probably killed a fair few. But there's the dreaded 88. Same kind of 88mm gun that was used to kill tanks. Multi-purpose. Multi-track drifting. Let's see. So we got our BF-109 over here. Dreaded German fighter. Used from the early war to the end of the war. Got our P-47. These were also used for escort duty, but not as much. These could carry a larger bomb load than most other fighters, so they were used as attacker planes too. B-26, light bomber. Used, it's a lot like the B-25. There's a video on YouTube that I'll link in the description that is like an army training video from the 40s, talking about how to operate the whole plane. Pretty cool. It got a couple famous actors that were, well, they weren't famous at the time, but would become famous later. P-38 on the other side. Twin engine fighter attacker. There's a book out about a couple people who would become aces in this thing. Apparently it's really good. I haven't read it though.
Hello visitors,
but rather famous.
And welcome to the National Museum of the United States Air Force. We invite you to join our volunteer docent for a free guided tour of our newest building, which features a full-size walk-on space shuttle exhibit in the Space Gallery, the first airplane into Hanoi to liberate the POWs in our Global Reach Gallery, the fighter version of the SR-71 in our Research and Development Gallery, the Presidential Gallery 707 aircraft which returned John F. Kennedy's body from Dallas in 1963. Please join our docent at the information desk located at the entrance to Building 4 by 3 p.m. Then, free guided tour at 3 p.m. Fourth building, space, global reach, R&D, and presidential aircraft. Thank you.
There you go. There's hangar 4. There's 4 hangars and a friggin' missile silo. It's huge. I'm only showing you the half of it. Not even. Here's the C-47 transport plane painted with D-Day stripes. So it was C-47s and gliders like that one that delivered the paratroopers on D-Day. So pretty cool stuff. There's our friend, the P-51, with the drop tanks made of paper mache, so that valuable war materials like aluminum wouldn't be given to the Germans when dropping the fuel tanks. It was the drop tanks actually that really increased the range to get along with the B-17s, B-24s going to Germany. Added extra fuel, they'd use that up, drop them, or if they got into a dogfight, drop them. They're just as maneuverable as before, but with an increased range. So we're going to do a little walk around of our C-47 friend here, because we're going to get around, well actually no, we weren't. We are not going to do that. Here's some paradrop stuff, like a motorbike they can use for dragging stuff. Airborne artillery gun, taken by the glider. The front would open up, and they'd drop it out. They could even carry jeeps and those things. After D-Day, Hitler starts getting a little bit more desperate, and also a little bit more desperate for revenge. And that's what these guys were for, revenge. They call them revenge weapons, or vengeance weapons. Hence the V in the nickname, or in the designation. V1. This is the V1 used for vengeance. It was propelled by a jet engine, and it's called the Thumper because it would go thump, 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 thump until it ran out of fuel. Then it would glide onto its target. It used a very, very rudimentary guidance system, unmanned, and could hit within somewhere of a 50-mile radius of where they aimed it. So not exactly a precision strike weapon, but still pretty scary, and no manpower lost. Then behind it, its bigger brother, the V2, designed by a certain Werner von Braun, who, if you're a rocket nerd, you may have heard of, because he's the same guy who designed the Saturn V rocket, which took American astronauts Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and I guess Mike Collins, even though he was really only orbiting, to the moon in 1969. But he designed this first. Killed thousands. Between the V1 and V2, I think it was somewhere in the tens of thousands of British civilians in London, because they were pretty much all fired at London. Until, I think, early 1945, when the British and American forces invaded the Netherlands, or liberated the Netherlands, really, and captured the last launch sites for these rockets. And, of course, the jet, but yeah. Coming back over this way, we see the tail end of the B-24. And this is a rather special plane right here. I believe this is a Bf-110. Romanian. You can see it has the Romanian signature markings. German light bomber. A lot like the B-25, but German. And then they loaned it out to other people like the Romanians, as you can see here. This is a rocket-guided missile, or rocket-guided bomb. Pretty scary if you've ever played Sniper Elite 4 Italia. This is the thing that they're trying to defeat in the first mission. Radio controlled, I think. Yeah, pretty cool. German wonder weapons. You know, there is some historical reference material that you can use for the Sniper Elite games, but a lot of it's fiction. In fact, the entire story is fiction. It's just that some of those super weapons are real. Not the Rat, of course, though. Here's another Spitfire. This one seems a little bit more average, without the cannons on the side. In fact, I don't even see any gun ports on this one. Huh, that's weird. But, yeah. K-24 camera. Built in 1942. Okay, cool. This is pretty cool. Aerial reconnaissance. There's a plane over here, DH-93. No idea what this thing is. You'll have to learn when you come, if you come. But, yeah. Allied POWs. Same kind of railroad car they used to transport Jews to concentration camps. It's just the kind of railroad car that they had back then. But, yeah. So a little exhibit here on the POWs and all that. If you ever seen the movie The Great Escape, you'll know plenty about that kind of thing. We keep going this way. More exhibits on that whole front. Okay, we're getting towards the tail end of the exhibit now, and we're just gonna walk past our friend, the Bf-110. Oh wait, that's the Ju-88D. Okay, never mind, not the Bf-110. Not exactly an aircraft expert. American aircraft, sure. Other aircraft, not as much. This is pretty cool, though. We'll stop by here. The 509A1 rocket engine plane, German fighter interceptor, only had about 3 minutes of fuel. So it would zoom up from the airfield, just take off almost immediately, intercept Allied planes for a couple of minutes, then glide back down and land. Here's one of the more famous ones of the war, the FW-190. These were the German fighters that were the contemporaries of the P-51s. These are the only ones that were really able to give the P-51s a run for their money in terms of maneuverability and speed. It was these planes that Allied bomber crews and fighter pilots alike feared, both for their technical ability, and also the pilots who flew these were really damn good. So yeah. Over here we got one of the more famous German planes of the war, the Me-262, jet-powered plane. One of them Wunderwaffe, or super weapons. Jet propelled, had 4 machine guns in the front, some of them even mounted with an anti-tank gun. Have that kid for size comparison. This thing's about 10 feet long. Literal anti-tank gun, just mounted on the front of the friggin' fighter. So yeah, kind of a thing. We'll keep going now. Here's the interior of a jet engine. We'll keep going this way. Another P-47. This one used in the Pacific Theater because we are getting towards the Pacific Theater operations. This, I don't know what this plane's called, but it's a transport aircraft. As you can see, this exhibit here is on the hump, the Allied nickname for the air route supplying China. This is an original map from 1944 used by the Air Transport Command for flying the routes over the Himalayas from India into China over there. This is all contested territory now between India and China, so yeah, I believe Mount Everest, if it is to be believed, yes, right over there. It's the tallest one. So yeah, flying over the Himalayas, and you can see that Mount Everest, compared to the other ones, isn't actually that much taller. They're all pretty tall. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. Here's an A-20 Havoc 2-engine attack aircraft, and we're getting to the good bit now, but I'll spare you the time. No, I'm kidding. So here's a PBY Catalina naval patrol aircraft. These were used throughout the war for air-sea rescue and all sorts of cool stuff, reconnaissance as well. But here's the main show. B-29. It's a silver plate B-29, and if you know the significance of that, congratulations, because this is Boxcar, the B-29 that bombed Nagasaki using Fat Man, the nuclear bomb. Silver plate B-29s were specially modified so that they could carry nuclear weapons. They shed a lot of weight so that they could actually take off, because nuclear weapons weigh a lot of pounds. Only 1 bomb bay instead of 2. So yeah, if you care, we'll take a quick look at the nose art. The nose art was actually painted after the war, which is why it's so prescient, right? Because it has Salt Lake, which is where the 509th Bomb Group trained to bomb using nuclear weapons, and then Nagasaki, right, which is where they bombed. The original target was, I believe, Kokura, another city in Japan, much more of a military target than Nagasaki, but the clouds over Kokura prevented Boxcar from actually dropping the bomb on Kokura. So they diverted to their secondary target, which was Nagasaki. In fact, Kokura got saved twice by clouds, because the original target for the mission that bombed Hiroshima, piloted by Paul Tibbets flying the Enola Gay, was actually intended for Kokura as well. So, if you're from Kokura, or live in Kokura, or have visited Kokura, that city is the luckiest city in Japan. So we got 2 models here of the bombs. On the left we have Little Boy, which is the bomb dropped on Hiroshima on August 6th, 1945. This was a uranium bomb activated by a gun that would fire a piece of enriched uranium from the back of the bomb here to the front, where it would hit another piece of enriched uranium. And then, of course, at that point, it would go critical and where I'm standing, I would just go, and I'm gone. Yeah, I'd just be flashed right out of existence. Same thing would happen over here with the Fat Man atomic bomb, named for Winston Churchill, or nicknamed for Winston Churchill. Of course, Winston Churchill had been fired at that point, elected out of office, and replaced by Clement Attlee of the Labour Party. But Fat Man, Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill's pretty fat, so fair nickname. This is a plutonium bomb, similar to the one he detonated at the Trinity site in Alamogordo, I have no idea, New Mexico, which was the first atomic detonation on July 18th, 1945. So this is the one that was actually used on Nagasaki, not the original. This is a replica, of course, but it was detonated by using electrical shocks to shock a ball of uranium no bigger than my fist. So it would send a whole bunch of electric shock in there, and that would make the plutonium go critical. Curtiss Wright R-3350 engines, and here's a painting. So, pretty cool. The Enola Gay actually flew on both missions. The Enola Gay was a support aircraft on the second mission to Nagasaki. Here's the crew. Nagasaki actually is one of the original Christian parts of Japan. The Nagasaki had been opened to Dutch and Portuguese traders as early as the 1400s, I believe. And so Christian settlements had been in the Nagasaki area for a long time, even under persecution. And the bomb, when it detonated about 100 yards away. Ground zero is about 100 yards away from the site of a Catholic cathedral, the Urakami Cathedral. And even though it wasn't a Sunday, there was a mass going on at the time. And so the whole church was obliterated with everyone inside. That's just one of thousands of stories, of course. I happen to be of the belief that the bombs were justified, though, of course, still really bad. But yeah, that's Boxcar. Over here, we have a American night fighter. I'm not an expert in American night fighters. I don't even know what this one's called. I'm gonna have to go read the sign. But it's pretty cool anyway. I believe there's one more of these in the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum Udvar-Hazy Center. And it's a P-61C Black Widow. There it is down there. Alright, Moonlight Serenade, that's pretty cool. I like that name. Glenn Miller song, great song. And then here's a Japanese rocket-powered kamikaze plane, especially designed for that purpose. These were used to destroy American warships in a fashion hitherto unheard of by Western powers. And there was a tactic much like the V-1, where it was just desperate, last kind of gamble. Though of course they actually put production power into this, which is kind of silly in my opinion, but yeah. Kamikaze attacks manned suicide aircraft. So it's like the V-1, except you have a pilot. There was actually a plan for the British to man V-1s, but that kind of, or not for the British, but the Germans to man V-1s. But yeah, that never really panned out.
Planes were also used against Allied invasion forces ashore on Okinawa, and to a lesser extent against B-29 bombing the Japanese home island. The first kamikaze struck during the battle for the Philippines in October of 1944. At first, the Allies believed the Japanese planes were flying into their warships after being hit by anti-aircraft fire. But as more and more ships were hit, the Allies realized that Japanese pilots were purposely crashing their planes with full knowledge that it meant certain death.
I believe that was the attack on the USS Bunker Hill right there. They specifically target aircraft carriers, of course. Apparently the USS Missouri was hit by one, and when the captain decided to give the pilot of the kamikaze a proper burial at sea with full military honors, the crew almost mutinied. But, yeah. Well, we're gonna keep going on this way. Got some uniforms from various departments, various air forces. American, British, Brazilian. Oh, weird. Luftwaffe, makes sense. Italian, Japanese, Mexican. And here is the tail gunner position of the B-29 that bombed Nagasaki. So it would have been from back here at, I don't know the man who sat back in there, but he would have had his welder's goggles on and seen a few miles behind him in that direction. Though, of course, you know, the mushroom cloud rising over Nagasaki. But that is the World War II exhibit in the National Air, or not National, but in the National Museum of the United States Air Force. And you go that way, you see World War I and all sorts of cool stuff like that. And you go that way, you see Cold War up to the present and space. So pretty cool. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in another video.